starting over. In case you didn't see that, we're just gonna start over because nobody's here. Hello, how are you doing today? I hope you're having a wonderful day. Now, when you're thinking about selling your home, there's always going to be questions that you're going to want to start asking your real estate agent, of course. Should I be painting? Should I replace the carpet? Do I need to move out before I list the house or stay until closing? These are all questions that are just going to be flooding your mind going, what are we going to do? Plus, you're stressed out about selling your house. So every seller wants to make smart choices that bring the best return without wasting time or money. So we're going to talk about today questions that sellers have and that have recently asked me about getting their home ready for the market. So make sure that you comment your question too so I don't miss any that I didn't think of or that have been recently asked. Last month we did questions about for buyers in the Cherokee Village area, and so now today we're going to talk more about questions for sellers. The most common one is, should I paint? Should I change the flooring? What should I do to get my house ready? Well, if you are going to paint, it is one of the best ways to make a home fresh. It's a cheap way to make your home fresh and ready to sell, but you want to make sure that you could do neutral colors. Now, if your home doesn't have neutral colors like mine that has purple and green walls, then yes, you're going to want to paint your house neutral colors. And it would also be a good idea maybe to change the flooring. It's also going to depend on how you're thinking about your price point. You know, if it's kind of more as is, ready to go versus ready to go and move in ready. That's the difference between changing flooring or cleaning it up. Most often, I don't recommend that you change the type of flooring. Clean it, yes. Maybe make any repairs that are needed, yes. But just to completely change it out, I wouldn't necessarily do, even if there's damage to it, because you don't know what kind of flooring that a buyer is going to want to put in. So I would hate for you to spend all that money to put that new flooring in and then have them turn around and tear it out. So painting, I would almost 100% say yes. Changing the flooring is kind of if and or I don't know, I need more questions, more answers to some questions before I fully answer that question for you. So there's good questions to ask your agent when it's considering your house. Now, on the other hand, if you're not considering replacing your flooring, you might ask, should I clean the carpet? Again, because if I do, then they're going to go ahead and tear it out and use the hardwood flooring that's underneath. Now, in most instances, I would say yes, clean it. Deep clean the carpets, get the house as clean as possible. But in this situation where the seller knew that there was hardwood floors under the carpet, I was like, maybe not. Maybe not waste your money on deep cleaning the carpet, because most likely they are going to take that carpet out and just have the hardwood floors underneath and maybe refinish them. It may not be worth it if the house is really in bad condition too, because got a fly in my face. It may not be worth it if you're selling it as is again, but cleaning is an even cheaper way to improve a house than painting it. So that's always a great way to really freshen a space up, is just by cleaning it. And carpets would definitely be one of the top ones, because it's going to not only hold stains but also smells, and that's all the way down in the pad too. So it's not like definitely a yes or no question. It just definitely depends on the situation, but most of the time I'm going to say do all the cleaning that you can. Another common question is, does it make more sense to do all those updates, the cleaning, the painting, the replacing the floor, or just go ahead and sell it as is? Unfortunately, this is going to be another one that is a case-by-case basis. It's going to be depend on how quickly you need to sell, how many funds that you have available to actually put improvements into the property. That's going to decide on whether or not you're going to want to do that. I can almost guarantee you that you are going to get a return on your investment if you make the updates to the home, like the painting and the replacing of the floor and the cleaning. But I can't necessarily guarantee how much more you're going to get. I can estimate that, just like with any other estimate on a market analysis on what a home is going to sell for. I can guess how much you'd get if you sold as is versus updates included, but I would recommend that you definitely ask your realtor about that and see if the house that you're selling is going to make more sense to improve it. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to make sense for you to do the best that you can with the time and funds that you have available to go ahead and improve that property as best that you can. whether it is just the cleaning or if you do the painting and the flooring, the more you can do, the better price you're going to get, but that also depends on how much you're going to have to put into it. So you're going to have to take all those details into consideration before you actually go ahead and do the as-is or the all-fixed up. Another common question is, should I sell my home furnished or just get everything out? Now there is a difference between that. It's the middle ground, in my opinion, is staging. But again, this is going to depend on each individual house. Most often, we do quite often get homes furnished sold. They are listed as being furnished and either have the price included when you sell the house, or you can add it on, or lots of times the seller will say the furnishings are negotiable. So it's definitely not a no, don't sell furnished, because we are kind of a vacation home area where people are going to just be coming here part-time, might rent it out for an Airbnb, make it a seasonal home. So furnishings might be really beneficial to a buyer. And that's going to be more likely a lake house or a golf house, something that someone would expect to buy as a second home or a vacation home. If it's not one of those things and it's a single family home, a smaller home, I probably wouldn't recommend selling furnished. Of course, it does make a space look much bigger and easier to imagine yourself in that home, imagine your belongings in that home, than if it is vacant. But a middle ground is doing that staging where you don't necessarily leave all your stuff or take it all away, but you're in the middle and you can either leave a few things and stage, like the kitchen, dining room, bedroom, or you can ask the stager to bring in their belongings and make it staged so it looks really nice, but also it's not cluttered. It's really cleaned up and it's organized and it looks like picture perfect. So that's what's nice about staging. So there's good sides and bad sides to selling a home furnished or not. Now, along with selling furnished or not is probably going to be the question, should I stay until closing or should I get moved out as soon as possible? Well, the right choice is definitely going to depend on you, because some people just can't move out until they've got somebody to move into their house and pay for it, so then they can go and pay for another house. But if you do have the option, I would encourage you to move out, not only because it allows the timeline for the buyer to be optimal, because they can move in right away after closing and not have to wait for you to get out, but also because it's easier for showings. We don't necessarily have to make appointments. It can be shown anytime anybody wants to see it. If an agent's there, that they can get in to show the house. It does make it definitely more difficult on your end, because if you are moving out before you've sold it and you probably bought a new place, then you're going to potentially have 2 house payments that you're going to have to pay, and you don't necessarily know how fast it's going to sell. So that can be a little bit scary for a seller, and possibly even me, knowing that we're on a very tight timeline to get your house sold. And so that also will play into how you're going to price things. So all of that is going to be into consideration, whether you can, whether you want to, or in what means you have available. And maybe you've already got a second home. Maybe you can just move to the other home and then you can stay, and then you can work on selling the house that is going to be listed. But it's going to depend on your timeline, how convenient it is for you, your budget, and how quickly you want to sell. Another common question is, since I am moving out, what do I do about the utilities? So I do have a seller that recently moved out of her home, and she wanted to make sure that it was still showable. So obviously you want the power on. You want to leave the lights on, but then it comes down to the question of heat and air, because you don't want to have high utility bills on top of a house payment. So I do, of course, encourage you to keep your power on so you can have the lights on, so you can see all the areas, all the nooks and crannies of the house best with the lights on. Now, it's not so much important that you have the water on. In fact, I would probably recommend that you don't have the water on, because then it's much less likely that you could spring a leak. You can do this in 2 ways. You can shut it off at the meter at the road and talk to the water company. They'll have you pay like a flat fee for a certain time period. Or you can leave that on if you've got a whole home shut-off valve just between the meter and your house. So then your house is still shut off, but then your meter's still running, which doesn't necessarily make sense. But along with the water and the power, you need to consider your water heater. You don't want to have breaker on if you don't have any water come in. So you definitely want to make sure you turn your water heater breaker off if you're leaving the power on and you're turning the water off. Also, heat and air is going to be important consideration because whether it's hot or cold, there's going to be a moisture consideration that you probably need to leave that heat and air running if it is possible. Because in the summer, it's going to be really humid and you want to keep that AC running to keep the humidity down to prevent any mildew. But in the winter, you also probably want to keep the heat on a little bit. There's also always that possibility of a pipe leaking. There is very slim chances, but we have had years where it gets below zero, gets below freezing, and I personally have had pipes freeze. It's very rare, but it's possible. But that's when I had the water on. So it depends on if you turn that water off and whether you want to heat on. Some people turn the water off and leave the heat on just to make extra sure that there's not going to be any pipes broken. So it's a little bit up to you, but I would definitely want you to leave the lights on so you can see everything. Now, going along with moving, I need help with cleaning. I need help with moving. Do you have any recommendations? Of course, we have area professionals that we work with. You definitely want to call around and make some price checks depending on if you're doing a local move or a long distance move, so that you know whether, because if you're doing a long distance move, you might have a couple trips to make or one large trip to make. It depends on if you are going to be able to load the boxes in the truck and unload it, or you need somebody to do that as well. But I can definitely hook you up with some local professionals that do that. And as well, after you get that cleaning and moving and boxing up going on, then you may want to think about staging your home. And we can do that. You can do that professionally. There are people in the area that you can definitely have help with decluttering. There are a couple companies in the area that will help with both decluttering and staging. Or there's lots of tutorials on YouTube about how to get that staging done and helping with decluttering. But I can give you a referral to area professionals that do staging. I've had a couple listings lately that has used a local lady that has done some really good things for their home, and they're very happy with them. And I think she's had other agents in the area that have used her too and also been happy with her. So that's at least one that's local I know of. I'm sure there's more in the area that you can work with. Now, commonly in our area, because we have a lot of undeveloped land, we have a lot of houses that have an extra lot with them. It has more than one lot. Like often you'll see a house with a lot on each side for sale, or maybe the lots behind it for sale. In fact, we have one in Highland that I think all the lots around the house are for sale. So commonly sellers will ask, should I sell this all together? Should I break it up? Should I sell the lots apart? And then of course we have houses out in the country on acreage that are going to be much more, like 20, 40, hundreds of acres. And that's the question that sellers usually ask: should I sell the house all by itself? Should I sell it with this acreage? Should I sell it with that acreage? Should I sell the whole thing? There's definitely, again, different options that you can do. If it's city lots like Cherokee Village, Horseshoe Bend, and it's an extra lot with the house, I would encourage you to include it with the sale. Sometimes the buyers want that extra lot for the privacy. Sometimes they don't, because it's an added tax assessment against them that they're going to have to pay more in taxes. So overall, I would say it's going to be a benefit, so I would encourage you to do it. However, if you have very large acreages and maybe it's wooded and it's cleared and the house is here and the land is way over there, then you could consider selling it separately. You might actually get more for the property if you sell it separately. So that is definitely an option to do. But more often I would say sell it together. And then you can also say, if you're breaking it up, then you may want to consider different pricing. That's how we can enter it on the MLS. So you can say, well, you can get this parcel for this much and this parcel for this much, or you can get it all together for this month. So there are different options that you can do as far as how much land to sell with your property. Of course, something that some people often forget is curb appeal. So should you invest in curb appeal? Absolutely, because the way things go right now, in-person showings are much less than they used to be. First, the person's going to go online and cruise through Zillow and Realtor.com. They're going to just do an overview on Realtor.com, and then they might pick one out and say, oh, that's kind of nice. Then they're going to go drive by the neighborhood and see, okay, yeah, this is a nice neighborhood. Then they're going to go drive by the house, and then they're going to kind of get an idea of what the houses next door look like, what your house looks like. So that's why it is important to have that curb appeal for them to then go and make the appointment to see the inside. You want to make the property very inviting. So it's definitely something that you want to put on your list when you're getting ready to list your house, is adding that curb appeal. Now, once you've got your house listed, a common question is, how did that showing go? I completely understand that sellers want to get feedback from the agents and the buyers that have seen their house, what they think of it. Obviously, if you get an offer, you know that they liked it. But if they didn't necessarily, or they weren't ready to jump the gun right away, they want to be, why not? Why didn't they make an offer? I will tell you that most agents in the area will ask for feedback from showings, but you're not necessarily going to get it. Some agents just don't reply. They don't give us any feedback at all. But we found that there has been some cases lately where agents have gotten in trouble for giving that feedback. We have to, as an agent, I have to be careful about what I reveal to a seller about what a buyer said. It's because if that buyer says, oh, I loved it, it was amazing, and then makes an offer, the seller's gonna be like, well, if they thought it was amazing, why am I negotiating on the price? Or they could say something like, there's this, and this wrong with it, and it's just not right for me, and then they turn around and came back and made an offer. That seller could get upset about those things that they said about their house and also not be willing to negotiate. Definitely heard it happen before. So we will, as agents, do our best to get feedback, even if it's just from the agent themselves rather than the actual person that showed the property, but also be prepared for not necessarily getting feedback from everybody. Now, of course, our most common questions when we work with sellers about listing their homes is, how much can I list my house for? How quickly will it sell? What will I walk away with? So to do the best way to answer these questions is for me to do a market analysis, and I can try to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges on different types of homes that are available that match your house, either bedrooms and bathrooms, garage, fireplace, whether it has acreage or not, whether it's lakefront or golf front, so that the homes that I'm comparing are more accurately priced and how much they are per square foot or things like that to decide how much we should list your home for. Now that would help us decide, and also look at houses that have sold recently so we know if these are accurate prices that people are listing them for. To also see how quickly it will sell, again, we look at those houses that have sold recently and how many days they've been on the market, how many new listings there are, how many price changes there are, because there's going to be a buyer and a seller market. So it is important that you speak. I encourage you to speak with a seller, a realtor that is in your area and knows the local market, so they know how quickly it will sell, and that will probably change your decision on how much you're going to list it for. All of that would be in a market analysis when working with me. It would tell you what I would recommend to list it for, average days on market for your area, as well as what you would walk away with. In our market analysis, it gives you a net proceeds depending on what price that you decide that you want to list it at. It's going to say I usually give two options, and then it talks about commissions, closing costs, escrow fees, title insurance, and deed stamps, all the costs that you're going to incur by going to closing, standard costs. I mean, obviously you could ask for the buyer to pay things, but these are customary costs that a seller makes so that you can kind of get your bottom line up front before you even get an offer. So that net proceeds give you an idea, because some people are looking at their bottom line. Most people are looking at their bottom line rather than just a list price. So those are a lot of the questions that I've run across as working with sellers recently, and I hope that you will also put comments below, and so I can answer future questions if you come across this video. But selling your home isn't just about listing. It's about presenting it in the best possible light. Every decision that you make, from those paint colors to whether or not to do staging, can influence how fast it sells and for how much. So the key is to focus on your time that you have and the budget that you have available on what really counts. And that's why it's important that you talk to your realtor and ask them, what area should I be really focusing on? Someone that knows your market, understands behavior in your buyers locally, and it can help you prioritize what truly meets the area and your home. So if you want to get more details about selling, I do have another video that we talk about things that you shouldn't tell your realtor when you're getting ready to list your house. I thank you for being with me today, and I hope you have a blessed day. I don't like that.